Okay, well, thank you so much, Christine. Again, welcome to everyone, and welcome to you, Miguel. Thank you so much for deciding to do this.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, what we're going to do is just I'll give you a quick overview. I'll give a little bio about you. I'll ask you about how we know each other, about your leadership journey, and then I think some fairly specific questions about Migell Acosta, like what it was like to follow someone like Jose Aponte um, down in San Diego. Um, as a first-time library director, maybe the toughest decision you've had to make so far, and a little bit more about that. Obviously, a little bit about leadership in crisis. And I want to maybe talk to you a little bit about the politics of being a library director for a county system, and a few fun questions too, but we'll get to those later. But first, let's start with a little bio about you, Miguel. And right now, you are the director of San Diego County, 33 branches. Prior to that, you were the assistant director and the chief information officer for the County of Los Angeles. For that, you worked in Santa Monica, and you actually worked at the RAND Corporation. I'd be kind of interested to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure.
And then you did get your MLIS from UCLA, and you have a BA in psychology from UCLA. Go Bruins. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to ask you the first question I always ask everyone else. And this one I don't know the answer to, and I'm not sure you know the answer to.
Oh, either, okay. I'm intrigued.
How do we know each other? When do you remember the first time we met? Because I really think a lot of leadership is about relationships. And so how do we know each other?
So the first time we met, we don't know each other well. We haven't worked together, been on any committees. The first time we met in person, it was at one of the CLA conferences, and I had a pocket square in my suit pocket, and you said, "Oh, you like pocket squares? You have to meet somebody," and you dragged me over to meet one of our colleagues who was also wearing a pocket square, and I thought that was really cute and charming. But the reason I was interested in this question is, and since we're talking about leadership, so one of the shorthands of being effective leader is understanding somebody's reputation and being able to trust them. So Robert, it's no surprise to you that you have a really wonderful reputation in our community, well-deserved and well-placed. And so because so many people that we know in common have spoke so highly of you, therefore I have a lot of trust in you. And so what that means is it's actually a time saver. So when you had the leadership series and I saw your name on it, I quickly started recruiting my staff to join that cohort, right? Because I could trust you, right? I knew they were going to get good information. I didn't have to read your bio. I didn't have to give you a call or anything like that. So it's one of the aspects when you become a leader, you value trust really highly because it saves you a lot of time. And I've got, if we have some time, I can tell you how it got me a job at Santa Monica at some point. But yeah, super, super important. So glad you brought that up.
Well, I mean, first of all, thanks. I thought you were going to say I was cute and charming, but I guess only the idea was cute and charming. But yeah, I think Miguel really does make a good point about it's your reputation, I guess, or your brand. And I'm not talking about me, but one thing I've learned, and I think Miguel can tell you the same thing, your brand enters the room long before you ever walk in there. So, be aware of that if there's some kind of preconceived notion about you, it's already out there and it's going to follow you before you ever really make your own presence known. Okay, so let's, get into your leadership journey. Just, tell us a little bit more about where you came from and then how you got to where you are today.
So you said you're a little interested in the RAND Corporation. So let me tell you that, not to be biographical, but just to share what might be helpful to other folks. So when I finished my bachelor's in UCLA, I had an inkling that I would like to be a librarian, but I didn't know anybody in the profession. So I thought, well, I better, before I invest in graduate school, I better, try it out. So I got a job as a library clerk at the RAND Corporation processing magazine serials, we called them at the time, but magazine subscriptions. And so it was a clerk job, right? So, however, as they got to know me and I started, getting a little promotion, I entered library school, but I was about, halfway done. And I had a talk with the director. And the director said, so, the usual question we've all had, where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? So I started telling her, essentially, I started describing her job. I want to be a director of a mid-sized special library that focuses on, science and policy and this kind of stuff. I'm about halfway through and I get this look on my face because I can tell, like, I'm describing her job, right? And I'm kind of get horrified. And she's like, no, that's fine. Go ahead. She goes, so you want my job? I go, yeah, I would love your job. It'd be great. So I used to tell this story, the same story with like, hey, I was kind of a clever guy to come up with that, right? But now I tell this story, it was just a complete stroke of luck because she could have responded any number of ways. She could be like, I don't want competition, or who's this guy? But instead she was like, okay, that's important for me to know. And that'll guide, some of the stuff that we'll work on together. Well, the most important thing, because I disclosed that, is shortly after that, we had that organization, along with other what are called federally funded research and development centers, had they had to recalculate how they did revenue. And she didn't have anybody else on staff who was very interested in budget. So I would spend, an hour or two just being a springboard for her to talk about the budget decisions she had to make. It was invaluable experience for where I was in my career, like just first year of school. And I was already having these major budget decisions, feedback or input or understanding them. So so be your genuine self, be honest about your motivations. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe I just got lucky is what I can say. And so I ended up being there 5 years. I ended up becoming a systems librarian, had a great relationship with her, and just learned tons there. So that was first job. Yeah. So
and
just really quickly.
Santa Monica, the county.
Yeah. So then what happened is, so for a long part of my career, I essentially made my living going from one system to another, implementing the integrated library system. So when I was at RAND, we were often called upon by the vendor to host, more in-depth demos for people in the area. So City of Santa Monica was thinking about buying the product we were using. I did a demo for them, and we would do a full day demo to really look at it. And so the director said, hey, are you interested in moving to a public library? We need somebody to implement this system. And so it wasn't, I had to compete for it. I had to do, go through the recruitment. But that's how I ended up going from the special library field. And I would have been happy spending my life as a special librarian, but that's how I got over into public libraries. And so I was at Santa Monica for 10 years, tons of formative experiences, the most of which was, I was on the team that built the downtown library, like a $50 million library. Invaluable experience around building libraries and capital projects. And then same thing happened. And then I was there 10 years. And then LA County was embarking on implementing a new integrated library system. At that point, I did have some reputation. So I didn't go respond to any ads. They called me and said, we heard you know some stuff about this. Are you interested in coming over to LA County? And again, had to do, of course, the formal process. There's no behind the scenes stuff. But so they brought me on to implement their integrated library system. And in each case, is both in Santa Monica and LA, even though I was there 10 years at each, it wasn't one position. I advanced in my position. So when I went to LA County, by no means was I the CIO when I started. I was like equivalent to a principal librarian, if you will. It had a different title. So, so that's short biography. If we have a minute, because I want to share something that goes back to trust. So when I was at Santa Monica Public, I was there for 10 years. And again, didn't start as a principal librarian, but a principal librarian, my boss retired, and her position, principal librarian, came open. And, you know, the mood amongst colleagues and even myself is like, I'm the natural pick for this, right? And, but they didn't open the position. They didn't say a word about it. They were really cagey. And my colleagues were like, you know, you should go in there and tell them, like, this is your position. Why aren't you advertising all this kind of stuff? I had a sense there was more to the story. And I was like, no, I'm going to just do my work, do the best. Something's going on that I don't know about. So, So then finally they did open the position. It was a competition. So I competed. I got to the final interview and everything like that. And all along people were like, this is yours. This is yours. I'm like, no, I think something's going on. So the day came, I went to like whatever, 2 levels of interviews. The day came to interview with the city librarian. And I walk in and, as we all do, rehearse my answers. What are they going to ask? So I walk in for the interview and it's her and the assistant city librarian. And she tells me, well, you kept your mouth shut for a year. Do you want the job? And what was it? It was like a loyalty test. It was trust. Could she trust me? She needed to know, was I going to go around and start campaigning saying it's really my job or anything like that, right? So trust was important. So once she had trust in me, she could ask me to do all kinds of stuff and know that I would deliver. It was nothing to do with my technical skills or ability or management skills or anything like that. It was trust. So again, always guard, folks who are listening, guard and preserve the trust and reputation that you develop. You'll find that a lot of times job interviews they're not just about your skills and ability. They're about your ability to be trusted by the folks that are hiring you.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about maybe the jobs, because I know we had a real interesting conversation last week with Derek about the jobs he did not get. Can you relate to that as well? And maybe some things you would want to say about, to people that when you don't get a job?
Yeah, I do want to share something. So this is my first time being a director, but not my first time applying to be a director. So I've gone through the experience of really wanting a job and not getting it. And now that I do a lot more, I'm on the other side of the table doing hiring, there's something I want to share with folks about recovering from not getting a job. And I'm sharing this not as do what I say, not do what I do. So this is the benefit of hindsight that I've learned this. So let's say, like all of us, you apply for a job, you're really hopeful. Maybe it entails a move to a new place. Maybe it's more money because it's promotional. And so in your head, you've built up, like, if I get this, it's going to be so fantastic. I'm going to get to move with to this new place and work with these great people. And lo and behold, you don't get the job. Okay. And so my response, and a common response, is, just like utter defeat, and, to various degrees, we're really upset about that. And I've been there. And so what I tell people is, you don't know everything that's going on the other side of the table. And so I've conducted multiple interviews and hired multiple people where I have the final 3 panelists, and there's a hair's difference between them. We would be happy to take any one of the 3, but one of the applicants, there's something that gave them a marginal advantage. Maybe they had a recent experience that mirrors what we know is going to happen in their near future. It could just be a really small thing. And if they decline the job, we'd be happy to go to the 2nd or 3rd candidate, right? But you don't see that. All you get is the no. So my advice, and I don't give advice lightly, my advice is, take your couple days to lick your wounds, eat your pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream, wallow in your misery, but then keep going, right? So you don't know everything that happened, and we're not often able to disclose why we did not choose you, right? Now, sometimes you just did poorly on the interview. Okay, that's a whole different matter. But what I want to encourage people is, keep trying. If it's something that you really want to do, keep trying. If you have a succession of no's, make sure you're getting the proper coaching on interview skills and all that, resume prep. I don't mean to discount that, but don't let a bad experience or a couple experiences take you off the market for 3 years, right? And before you try again. No, you just don't know what's going on and what everything that went behind that decision. So I just like to share that, to offer encouragement. If it's something you really want to do, definitely keep trying.
Okay, and again, along the whole job path thing, and this I think would be interesting to your colleagues down in San Diego as far as following, I'm going to call him a library icon, Jose Aponte.
Yeah.
But a lot, I think Michael Lambert could relate having to follow someone like Luis Herrera. And I'm sure there are other people out there that have gotten jobs where, yeah, you have to follow someone who basically walked on water before you. And, how do you deal with something like that? I'm
really glad you asked the question. We talked about it before. I really wanted to address this. So So let me first talk about the experience following Jose, and then I want to compare and contrast of how it could maybe go a little worse. So first of all, I had the advantage, I didn't know Jose at all. We never was on a committee together or worked together, so I really didn't know him from Adam too much, really. I knew that in 2012, the library was, Library of the Year. I was envious, as we all were, whenever our library's not chosen, right? But I didn't know much. So when I went for that initial interview, one of the questions was, so how are you going to fill Jose's shoes? I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and I got my own shoes. I'm sure everybody's going to get used to me. And I never gave it a second thought, right? And so it's not been an issue. They chose me for me. And so now I'm doing my thing. Here's the twist. Nevertheless, so I talked to him once after I got hired on the phone, brief conversation. Hey, he was lovely, wish you well, and everything like that. Nevertheless, I realized I've learned a leadership principle from him. And that is, when it's your time to retire, be gracious and make yourself scarce, right? I've not had this conversation with him, but in this leadership series that you've been doing, and in my experience, you've often seen directors just kind of disappear. They're doing the right thing for the next person. If you've been with an organization for 10 or 15 years, and you have a presence once you retire, it's natural your old colleagues are going to think to ask you questions and do everything like that. So the best thing is to make yourself scarce and let the new person do it. So I've already learned how to retire from him. It's not yet for me for a few years, but I'll know how to do it. So I really appreciate that. Now I want to compare that with, I once competed for a job in which I worked for the departing director for many years. And the thing that in hindsight, one of the mistakes I think I made is, I really, really liked working for that person. And I felt uncomfortable going into the interview and just I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that without regard for acknowledging that person's legacy. So I was trapped in my responses of well, so-and-so did this, but I want to take it here. So-and-so did this. And I think I was less my authentic self than I could have been if I hadn't known that person. So, again, I don't like to give advice a lot, but you're your own person. You're coming in. If you get the job, it's yours. I would say don't spend too much time comparing. Be your own person. Figure out what you want to do and just go forward.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, just a real quick question. So if you weren't a librarian, what would you ideally like to be doing? Not what necessarily you would be doing, but what would you like to be doing?
Sure. So there's an alternate universe in which I am the head of a construction firm. And okay. What I do is I build libraries and buildings, all kinds of stuff. I really love building. And I want to share this specifically because it taught me something. So when I was a very young person, I actually had the opportunity to get into, I had a brother-in-law who was going to set me up in pouring, as a entrepreneur, a young person, pouring concrete pads for patios and things like that. He was in the concrete trade. He was going to help me fund the equipment and teach me how to do it. I used to spend some time on the job with him. So I love concrete and building and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, I faced a crippling fear at the time. I was just too scared to even think about doing that. And so there's this alternate universe where I wasn't fearful at that time, and I followed his advice and I became the head of my own construction firm. And I bring that up because it wasn't until I would say my early 30s when I set a course for myself of kind of methodically approaching every fear that I had and just addressing it and taking it on. So my first public speaking engagement, it was with Friends of the Library at Santa Monica, and I was going to talk about internet access, and it was 5 people in the room. Lovely, couldn't be more lovely people. I got 2 words out and my throat just clamped down. And the president gave me a lozenge and said, "Here, sweetie, we'll come back to you later." Absolutely. And my, first 3, 4, 5 years, sometimes I do okay, and then other times just terrible. But it doesn't, so that still happens. Sometimes I'll bomb, but it doesn't, the fear doesn't stop me from accepting the engagement, right? So that's just one. And so that's something I think you can get pretty far in developing yourself by examining your fears, whatever it could be. It doesn't have to be public speaking. That's a common one, but it might be, chairing an organization. It could be exploring a new field in librarianship. It could be something in your personal life. So that's why I like to share that.
All right. You mentioned San Diego was your first actual library director gig. And so, I mean, up to now, then what's been the biggest decision you've had to make so far? I mean, with fallout from it, and, what did you learn?
So, the COVID-19 crisis, coronavirus situation we've been in has been really the kind of toughest decisions to make. And one of your other speakers alluded to this, and it's not so much having to make the decision, it's the way we make them. So a lot of library directors, and I think one of your former guests talked about this too, is we like to build consensus. We like to include staff in the discussion to the degree that we can. For me, it's a little bit different because one of my little hobbies is studying the science of decision making. So I like to get a lot of viewpoints, and I like to there's a technique to practice called a pre-mortem, like let's assume this is a bad decision, let's figure out how to improve it. But what happened during the crisis is there's just no time to do all that. And so there were certain days when I had to walk in with my administrative staff and just go, look, here's the 5 things we're going to do. There's not really, you get one chance to tell me it's bad decision, but then we're going to go execute, because you just got to get on with the execution. And so that kind of, if you're used to making high quality decisions because you're a consensus builder and all that, going in that alternate modality increases the number of bad decisions. And there was a time where I made a decision literally within 30 seconds. We lit up the phone tree and I'm like, nope, call everybody back. We're not doing that. And that's just not my usual experience, right? So it's the way you have to make decisions. Just today, we're going through the same exercise of we can have a really short discussion and then we just got to go get busy and execute. So so that's been a challenge, not for me, for everybody in this time.
I mean, so anything else than just about advice for leadership in crisis? Because it's a tough time.
And so often, if you're in a leadership position, you get called on to deal with, policy choices, operational choices. And so the advice is you just have to pay attention to everybody's life experience. I mean, this has been cataclysmic for a lot of folks. And even if your own staff have some sense of security, there could be family or friends that have lost jobs. And so just the human element, the emotional element, you can't ignore it. You can't always be a panacea, but, I tell my staff, we can talk about emotions. I can't guarantee you maybe the security and safety that you want, but let's talk about what that feels like, And so you have to just pull yourself back to that and pay attention. It's not profound advice. I think everybody's doing that, but it's been so impactful that especially now you can't ignore that. And because you have a lot of pull on the other side of your consciousness to go forward and do things.
Okay, leadership advice, turn the table around. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question, because no surprise to you, I've been tuning into your previous guests. So, and I'm glad you asked this because I have a little bit different answer. Sure, I've gotten advice, but a lot of advice you get comes from observing how other people behave. So I've worked with people that I've really admired because of the way they conduct themselves, because the way they interact with staff, just various aspects of their work life. And I've gotten advice by just watching how they do that. and kind of emulating that, right? And that's a really good source for advice. It doesn't have to just be at work. It could be just anybody you admire, family members, or, just anybody that you encounter. You could say, oh, that's like, they said it that way. That's really gracious. That's something I'm going to use, something like that. So yes, I've gotten advice, but by paying attention and listening, you can get a lot of really great advice just by seeing how other people conduct themselves.
I mean, I totally agree with you about that particular point. And maybe I'll get back to a little bit more about you being an IT background, because like librarian wise, yeah, I grew up in that kind of thing too. So maybe we've got that thing definitely in common. But yeah, I was never the kind of person to maybe solicit advice, but to watch other people and see that. And what are they doing? What can I adapt that they do into my style to make it my own, but still something that other people are doing, and not necessarily being told to do this, but rather observing what they do. And I've done that. I made a career out of that, actually. Okay.
I can give you, well, no, I won't go there. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, let's kind of change it up. And I'm going to ask this of the people out in our audience as well, because I want to find out something about you that maybe I don't know, and I want to find out something about Migell that you people don't know. But give us a fun fact, something that the people in San Diego County don't necessarily know about you. And again, audience, if you've got some cool fun facts that you want to share about yourself, well then stick it in the chat box and let's see. I can't think of, go.
Yeah, so I was telling folks, this is the one question I really dread, because it's not like I have some quirky hobby. I wish I did, but I spent I've been married many, many years, and my wife and I've raised 4 their adult sons now. But so my kind of fun, quirky thing is spending time with them, a lot of times in scouts, a lot of times just like doing really stupid things on overnight campouts, and having a lot of fun and things like that. Love outdoors and love cooking and gardening and some light construction and woodworking. I'm probably more nerdy. So like, I was telling Robert early, like I love to study behavioral economics, which isn't necessarily fun, but like that's genuine. That's something that I'm into and I share with my kids. I know. So in my family with my kids, we're not huge, we're sports fans, but not overly so. Politics is our sports. So we have a lot of fun talking about politics, talking about campaigns, political campaigns, and that kind of stuff. So that's really fun for us, and we're brutal in our opinions of politicians. So that's always fun to do. And then another fun thing, so my staff know this part because I've told this story, but others may see my name, my first name, Migell, like what is that? So my name is literally misspelled. It was intended to be the usual Spanish spelling, Miguel. What happened is it goes back to my parents. My mom is German. She was raised in Berlin during World War II.
Okay.
My father is Mexican-American. He was in the 101st Airborne Division for the Army for a 30-year career, actually in Easy Company. So he's like, I call him the Mexican Forrest Gump. Easy Company, that was the focus of that HBO series. He knew those guys. Anyway, so during the occupation of Germany after the war, he met my mom. Didn't speak any German. She didn't speak English. Nevertheless, love will have its way. They ended up getting married and had me. So my mom's like, so what do we call him? And he says, Migell, like the usual Migell. My mom, what does she know? Like, right? So in German, there's Michael with a double L. So she was the one who did the paperwork for the family. So that's how it was on my birth certificate. And I got to say, I was like, I don't know, 10 years old or so before I knew my name wasn't spelled correctly. So that's that story. It's a little fun.
Yeah, okay. That now I know, and I'll know better next time I send something to Migell with a U in San Diego and wonder
That's right.
why it's bouncing back and thinking, man, what happened to Migell?
You know, they didn't know about Google at the time, but it works to my advantage if you want to Google my name.
That's true, huh? You're probably the only one. Okay, well, I want to talk a little bit differently about some of the politics of your job, and maybe a little bit of a backstory as far as with me personally, I worked for a municipal library, and I thought it was nice being a director because you got one mayor, you got one city council, you got one city manager, and you basically have one city. But when you work in a county, well, in your case, what you got 33 of these things, and you probably got 33 different mayors and city councils. So, and beyond that, I'm going to assume that, what happens in Solano Beach is different than what happens in El Cajon or in Del Mar or, wherever else you are in the county. So what is, a little bit, tips, tricks, advice for dealing with such a really diverse kind of universe that you have to work in?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. My time at LA County really prepared me for this job in terms of the complexity of the interactions between the various jurisdictions. So if we have audience members who don't know much about county libraries, the way it works is, so I have 33 libraries in the county. All the unincorporated areas, de facto, I'm their library service, right? Then 11 of the 18 cities get their service from the county library. And then the other cities have their own jurisdiction. So for instance, Escondido, Carlsbad, Oceanside, they all run their own systems. City of San Diego, the beautiful downtown, not mine. The city library just by itself has more libraries than I do. So they're their own jurisdiction. So the question is why? How come some cities get their service from us and some get it from themselves? And so the way it works out, it's really a matter of history. So there's a California law, it goes back to 1904, that establishes what's called the County Free Library. And it essentially says, hey, various boards of supervisors, if you want to create a county library, go ahead. And then a year later, there's another law that says, hey, various municipal governments, if you want to create a library, go ahead. And so what happened, I'll use San Diego as an example, is that, so the county was busy building, it's infant county, was busy building all its municipal services like fire and police and libraries. And the city was doing the same, building its services. And they look at each other and go, well, I've got a library system, you do. Cool, you run yours, I'll run ours, and that'll be the difference. Now, there might be other communities where they're unincorporated at that time. And so they were getting library service, but then fast forward to the 50s, 60s, 70s, they decide to incorporate as a city. Well, now they got to create a city council. They have to create, maybe they decide to create their own parks department, fire department, all that. And if they just want to stay as part of the county library and not create their own, then it's fine. They don't have to take any action. They can be part of the county library. And that's generally how it happens and why you have this mix. The challenge sometimes is telling that story. So sometimes kind of one of the mistakes people make is that somebody will think a city is contracting with the county for library service. That's not the case. They are according to California Education Code, they are part of the county free library. They don't have to take any action. Any city can go its own way and create its own library system, or a city can join a county. It goes either way. So that's part of it, is just like, what does my jurisdiction mean? It's hard to compare to a school district or really anything else. And then, of course, then you just have the various voices of that. So you have the unincorporated, which the Board of Supervisors is essentially their city council. And then you have the individual city councils. Some mayors are rotational, some are elected. The city, we work with city managers and assistant city managers. It wouldn't be proper for us to go to elected officials for the various cities. We should, the proper channel is through city manager, city staff. And so essentially you just have a lot more relationships to manage and to nurture and to be good with. So as cities change leadership, you have to reach out and all that kind of stuff. So it makes things more complex, but anybody who has a lot of different friends of the library groups, it's somewhat similar. It's just, it's more voices at the table and everything like that. So you just have to make sure you do your due diligence and communicate well and pay attention to what it is that they want. So one of the things that I've done differently since I came to the county is I have what's called the Municipal Librarians Council. And so it's my library managers of those 11 libraries who are running, libraries for incorporated cities. and I bring them together for a separate meeting. We meet quarterly because I want to make sure that those cities get the advantage. If they had their own city library, that'd be one more leader at their table, right? There'd be one more agency to execute their vision for the city. So I just want to make sure we're paying attention to the needs of our various cities and participating in executing on what they're interested in getting done.
So, yeah, I mean, so you're treating, at least in the 11 Incorporated, those managers they're almost like city librarians.
I want to treat them that, I want them to have that they are playing that role. It's not the title or anything like that, but it's that it is that role. Yeah.
And their interaction, I mean, they're really the ones that are interacting with the city managers and the assistant city managers.
So yes, so it's them, and then we have a couple layers because we're so big. We have principal librarians, and then we have our deputy directors. So it goes up and down, but definitely that day to day is they're leading that effort, and then they let us know, hey, something's going on. You know, it's a two-way street. They got to let us know changes of leadership or direction.
And then politically, so do you deal directly with what your board of supervisors then, or do you have a CEO for the county?
Yes. So in San Diego County, we have a chief administrative officer, and then we have what are called groups. So county has, I don't want to get it wrong, we have many, many departments. And so the departments are arranged into group. We are in the group called Land Use and Environment Group. And so it includes Parks and Rec. That's our most familiar kind of partner department, but also Public Works and Ag Weights and Measures and Environmental Health and so on. So we have a lot of partnerships within our group, but yeah, that's how it's organized.
Okay. And next, before we got to the subject of politics, just wanted to throw out a little plug. If you're not aware, oh, I know you're aware of this, Migell, but if others who are listening, this is National Library Legislative Week. And it really is the chance to tell your story to the elected officials, whether they're in Washington or Sacramento, or even locally. But if you just want more information about it, just go to the ALA website, ala.org, and look a little bit more about the National Library Legislative Week, because there are things you could be doing every single day. It's going to take you 10, 15 minutes, but if it can help you to tell your story, especially now in this particular time, because libraries are doing such unique, different things that maybe they haven't done before, well then, yeah, here's your chance. And Migell just put a link to it out there. So definitely, spend a few minutes if it's something that, you're really interested in telling the story of your library. This is, I personally think, a great opportunity to do it.
When I talked about that thing of pursuing things you're scared of, political participation is one of them, that's a good way to get started. Yeah,
okay. And I'm kind of follow up along the same lines then, as far as, Migell, within California libraries during the whole COVID deal, what are some things that have impressed you that libraries are doing? And you're welcome to start with San Diego County if you like.
So I will share a little bit of our experience. So before this crisis hit, we had been had a really major strategic effort to build our digital library. And in January of this year, all the departments in the county had a chance to revise their, what's called the COOP, which is the Continuity of Operations Plan. And we all added an appendix around the pandemic. And so our COOP says that we have a direct support role to the folks who are sheltering in place to provide a digital library so that they have access. And so that gave us a mechanism to continue and really expand our effort to build the digital library during this time. So that's one of the things we've been doing with just really, we know there's a need. So for instance, just about all of our metrics have doubled. We have a couple ways that people can get a library card without ever coming into the library. We were doing, 1,000 a month that way. And when we're doing like 4,000 new digital cards in a month, digital downloads have increased and we've added resources. So that's one of the things that we had intended to do all along, is just we're doing it more rapidly. A lot of libraries are doing that and finding different ways to participate. We're doing some of the same stuff that others are. So, we have access to 3D printers. We've done 1,000 face shields. Our drivers have been, just even in the early days, stopped doing delivery to our libraries and delivering medical supplies and various things like that. So I don't think our story is really unique across California. We have fantastic staff that are on reassignment to other agencies, really challenging and needful reassignments. People challenged to, we discovered that we had a digital divide in our workforce that kind of mirrored what's going out in the community. So we had some folks who couldn't even participate in the early days in teleworking assignments. So we solved that. So I think we're a microcosm of what's going on throughout the state. But I really appreciate those. Some folks don't know, but the state library convenes all the library directors across California periodically, and we get to participate in a venue like this and share stories and advice and those kinds of things. So, so I think California and just nationally, libraries have responded as well as they can. We face a particular challenge, frankly. If you go to any large store, Costco or Target, what's one of the big signs out? Don't return merchandise. Keep it for now. And that's our bread and butter. It's like we're a sharing service. We don't sell products. Don't go one way out the door. They come in and out all the time. And there's a study everybody knows now, a study by spearheaded by IMLS to look at that. But that's a huge thing we need to answer, because we don't want to jeopardize the safety of our own staff and then the customer who's next in line to get the material. So that's been a real big challenge. And then keyboards, how do you keep them clean? I mean, all these kind of like basic things that we do all involve touch and handling things and being close to each other. So we have a particular unique set of challenges in libraries.
Okay, this is something I want to ask you about again, because I've met a number of your staff through, for example, the leadership program. I've met actually a couple of them through a program last year called the Leadership Challenge, through Eureka. I mean, I personally think, just my observation is, I think in San Diego County, there really is like a culture of learning. I guess that's what I would call it. But I mean, how do you try to go about trying to create something like that within an organization? Because I think personally, it's really nice.
So, I mean, it comes down to prioritizing that. So it comes, this question of leadership and what is leadership, I think it has to be answered individually, and it changes on circumstance. But for me, one of the things is to create an environment where other leaders can be born and potentially go off to lead other organizations, right? So, and this is a challenging county. So I don't know, this is going to be understood by people who work in really large organizations. So let's focus on, so a really large county, we have a lot of employees, we have a large budget to manage, but let's look at like the individual library manager. So you have a really talented library manager, they're running one of your most busiest libraries. But to what degree are they getting prepared for their next step? Like maybe they want to go off and run a city library. Generally in that role, if you look at like budget, they're probably handling directly the Friends of the Library budget that are getting donated to them, which compared to the organization's budget, it's a whole different scale, right? They may have a voice in local hiring to pick their staff, but they're not doing day-to-day interactions with HR. So there's a lot of skills I think they need to prepare them to be effective leaders and managers, whatever their next step is. And so I'm just trying to pay attention. I'm not a spring chicken in this career. I've been practicing librarianship now for many, many years. And I got a chance to learn all this stuff, right? So I'm trying to provide a mechanism for people, if they want to learn about this. And sometimes, in a meeting, I'll go, I'll tell staff, okay, some of you are going to go run your own organization. I'm not telling you to do that, but here's the thing you need to know. And then we'll take a deep dive on tax revenue and how all that works, right? Because where else are you going to learn it? I got lucky. I learned it because I had a ringside seat to some of these things. But that was partially accidental and partially luck. So I want to just make sure that people have that learning environment so they can, have the skills they need whenever they want to do next. Or just stay with us forever and ever. Everybody listening?
Okay, you heard that from the boss there. what would you consider to be the most fun and then the hardest parts of your job now?
So I'm not pulling anybody's leg. This is the honest truth. I love every aspect of this job. In my almost 30 years, my enthusiasm has not waned one bit. I love every aspect of it. I love working with all the great staff and customers and all the smart people and the various programs we get to do and all of it, just understanding county governance. And so every part of it every day is a blast. There are challenging days and there are unfortunate days, and those are the parts that aren't good. But we talked about trust earlier, but part of that is, can you trust yourself to make the right decision and help out? So the worst days are the days where staff are affected, whether it's illness or harm or bad days that they have, that you have to reach out and help them through that. So to see anybody hurt, that's always the worst thing. But the other challenges are all really opportunities. So, not a cop-out answer. Just I like every part of it, and there you go.
Okay, well, what I wanted to do now is just open up the Q&A, and whether you want to put it in the chat or in the Q&A thing is just, ask Migell Acosta anything you like, and we'll see if he's actually going to answer it. But before we do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just had one final question to ask you while people are putting things into the Q&A. So the last question I ask everyone: favorite book, favorite movie, your music, and your food. Go. Okay,
I'm going to do double task because I already knew this was coming up. So let's start with books. Probably one of the most seminal is a book called Neuromancer by William Gibson. Really got me started on my pursuit of cyberpunk and science fiction. Also love, there's a whole bunch of links. Music, the most interesting music that I listen to that not a lot of people know about is a style called ghetto funk out of the UK. So imagine funk vibe that is remixed and kind of techno and dubstep all together. I spend when I have free time, which is actually less than ever, I don't consume a lot of Netflix and movies these days, but I love podcasts. Great way. Talk about getting good advice. You get access to tremendous people. So I listed a few podcasts there: Pivot, Knowledge Project, Jordan Harbinger Show, Masters in Business and Capital Allocators. It's not like I'm not an investor or anything like that, but understanding capital and budget and how to allocate properly, super interesting. Also, a shout out to author Annie Duke. There's a link to her book, Thinking in Bets. So if you're at all interested in increasing or trying to understand and increase the quality of your decision-making, absolute fascinating field, emerging field now, especially the last few years gotten a lot of attention, is around behavioral economics. There's a book by Michael Lewis called The Undoing Project, where he talks about the research of two Israeli psychologists, Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman went on to win the Nobel Prize in Economics as a psychologist, and pretty much they deconstructed kind of rational ideas of economy and kind of catalog all the biases that filter through our minds when we make decisions, even though we believe we're behaving rationally. And then you had that question, like, what's your song to when you're going up to stage? I picked Sabotage by the Beastie Boys. That always gets, that's pumping song. I love that. So anyway, so that's some of those things.
Well, I don't see anything about food.
Oh, my wife's cooking is my favorite food. She's a fantastic cook.
What is her? Oh, I'm coming to your house for dinner. What are you making for me?
So tacos. Oh, I got to tell you. So one time, so tacos, like the tacos dorado, which is like, with the meat filling, but then the whole taco's deep fried, and then you put in your fillings, right? So we were going to host a party with, I think we had 5 friends or something coming over, 5 or 6. She made like 2 trays of the tacos for everybody, but it was like a terribly stormy night. And only one of our friends, who coincidentally took a motorcycle to get there, he's the only one who could show up, who weathered this storm. And he and I, we demolished it. We ate all the tacos that was there for everybody. So, so that, she's got a lot of great dishes, but she's Latina, so obviously all the Mexican food, but she cooks Italian and all kinds. So, and she's a great bake as well. So definitely that's my favorite, are the home cooked meals. But then we, we're kind of, we go out for Asian because we haven't mastered that cooking style. So whether it's pho or dim sum, that kind of thing.
I mean, you used the proverbial we. Do you also cook?
So I don't have as much time. I do cook. So my little tradition is my first son was born a few days before Thanksgiving, which is a big event. So that year I cooked the entire Thanksgiving dinner, and it's a tradition I've continued for, what is he, 26 now? So for 26 years, I do the entire Thanksgiving dinner, except for the pumpkin pies, which my wife still does, but I do everything. So yeah, I'm pretty handy around the kitchen.
Wow, that's impressive. Thanksgiving scares to, I mean, I think I'm a very good cook. I would never consider doing Thanksgiving because roasting a turkey just, you mess that thing up and you ruined everyone's weekend. But, oh, well. Okay.
Big tip, listen to your thermometer, not what the books say.
Okay, so we have a few other questions here. One, okay, best Mexican food, LA or San Diego?
Oh, LA.
Yeah?
Oh my God, yeah, without a doubt.
Where?
So, taquitos, right? We all know taquitos in LA. In San Diego, they're called rolled tacos. And I would go to a Mexican restaurant, like, where the heck are the taquitos? So it's just different. And then the tacos, like like what we call tacos in LA, which is the small corn tortilla. Mm-hmm. In San Diego, they call those like Tijuana tacos or other things. So their taco is like a tortilla, flour tortilla with like lettuce and stuff. So LA for sure.
All right. Okay, another question. So how do you develop leadership skills and other skills needed to be a manager or to go to the next level if they aren't necessarily available in your organization?
Well, first of all, they can be gotten outside the organization. So you can, there's a lot of nonprofit groups that are looking for help, and you can definitely take a leadership role there, which would be more than welcome. You probably have way more skill than you even think you do by tackling on that if there's no immediate avenue. I think also being honest with the people around you about what you want to do. They may respond, they may not. If they don't respond, then again, you have to, decide for yourself whether you're going to stay with the organization or not. I think being super observant. So one of the practices I did often when I had exposure to like my, library director, I would guess what their decision was going to be on a thing and kind of reason it out for myself. And then once they came to a decision, if they were open to it, like, what was your thinking? How did you get there? And so I was like, reiterating and improving my own thinking about that. Oh, there was a political element to the decision I didn't think about that they did. So like play the game. Always ask yourself, what would I be doing? How would I be thinking through this, right? So okay. Those are some things.
Oh,
Get involved in CLA.
You started a bit of a food fight between LA and San Diego, but that's your issue to deal with later. And actually, I would probably say, go hook up with Jeannie and Miko. They can show you the best places to eat because they showed me some amazing places on Conway Boulevard or whatever.
Convoy. They used to do a blog about it. Convoy is fantastic. So folks in LA, think of Valley Boulevard, Asian food on Valley Boulevard. In San Diego, Convoy is our Valley Boulevard. Outstanding.
Okay.
Asian food.
All right, well, let's get back to the issue at hand. A couple of different questions about mentors. Who were maybe some of your specific role models as you were coming out?
I gave this some thought because some of your previous guests talked about this and the need for having a mentor. I've not had a conversation with somebody where I've said, can you be my mentor? Like, let's enter this relationship. I just been really lucky in my career that there were people that I looked up to, either my own supervisor or just other people in the organization, where it was just conversation. It was like, tell me, a little bit why you are doing this way. Can you get people to like kind of narrate their thought processes? And I've relied on that. And that's not just at work, that's anywhere. Anytime you come across some expert in whatever field, be interested. Somebody, uh, minor example, when I was building Santa Monica Public Library, there was such thing as a lighting designer, right? So we had there's a room there with a sloped auditorium for performances, and all the lighting is designed by somebody. Like that's what that person does for their life, and they went to school to do it. And when that person came to tune the lighting, I just happened to be there. It was after hours, and he was there with an assistant. Everything was closed, and he was going to do the final adjustments on all the spotlights, all that lighting, right? So I said, can I, hang out and see what you do? And so it was 4 hours, and he essentially just narrated what he was going through his head about how he was choosing these lightings and stuff like that. It was fascinating 4 hours. I learned so much. Like there's no way I could reproduce his experience. So that was like it was 4 hour mentorship, right? He was willing to share what he was thinking. So just as you get any exposure to expertise, like, hey, can you help me understand how you see the world? What is going on? And so I think of more mentorship as an opportunity. I'm not discounting it all, please. A formal relationship, that's great. Just hasn't been my path. So look for it however you get it. It can be instances. It could be just an experience where you learn and get to see somebody who spent a lot of time doing this thing, what their expertise is.
Okay, another question about, are you active in either CLA, ALA, other professional organizations for that matter, and then, or perhaps a recommendation for associations for newer librarians or even students?
Yeah, I'm sure that, there's probably a lot of folks on this call. I'm not a well-known name in California. I haven't held CLA office or anything like that. So I'll just say it plainly. We have to find a work-life balance, and that's where I ended up finding the balance. My daily work consumed so much of my time. I had to find some place, I'm sure I could do way better spending time with my family, but I had to find some way. So early on, like I was on OCLC Members Council, but that was 3 trips a year to Columbus, Ohio, plus meetings and everything like that. I just had to find some place to find time. So I encourage it. I think it's fantastic experience, and you can help give so much back to the profession. I try in just the people I work with to find a way to give back, but no, I don't have a lot of experience doing that. I think it's valuable, just my own journey. Okay,
makes total sense. Oh, here's a fun question. I think, put on your programming hat. You can do any program that you want. In fact, you could tell the story of what you said before the call went on about doing a program that you kind of invented, but any other program that you could ever do in your life, what would it be?
Yeah, so the experience I was sharing was when I was at City Santa Monica, I conducted what I believe is probably the first ever LAN party, which is a big computer gaming night for teenagers. So we had a lock-in. We had like 30 public use PCs, and we converted them all to gaming PCs. And the kids came in, we had pizza, and it was an incredible experience. It was an experiment. I got the idea of LAN parties from Europe, where they were really popular. To be honest, I was looking at a picture of a LAN party, and it was like, oh my God, my first floor looks exactly like that. It's got like 30, 40 PCs. Let's just use them. It really spurred on the growth of teens coming into the library and getting familiar with us. And we had a teen advisory group after that. So that was probably one of the craziest things I did. I did a presentation on it at ALA Midwinter in Boston. I don't remember the year now. So I think it got some popularity for sure to do gaming. So that's something that I had a hand in trying out. So that was great. But programming. In San Diego County, we actually have a lot of rural communities, and often these communities don't have access to broadband in the home. All of our backcountry libraries, we're part of CalRen, so we have killer speed. So we're looking at the possibility of extending our access to our bandwidth throughout the community using a technology called available white space. So one of my deputies is working on that. So we're also questioning what's the definition of a library? Can it be a place that provides access to the broader internet without a building? So yeah, all kinds of fun stuff to do.
It looks like someone wants to do a LAN party in San Diego County, so you can figure that one out. All right, okay, last question, and then we're gonna bring this one to a close. But okay, so when you ride off into the sunset, what do you want your legacy to be?
I don't think I've ever been asked this question. I'm a little flummoxed. If I've helped, my colleagues at the county library and have helped the community and had some positive impact, that would be enough. That would be fantastic. I don't know if that's any one thing. Trying to do great things for our community and our staff every day. I have to think on that one a little bit. All
right, sounds good. All right, Migell Acosta, webcam here, webcam there. You got the last word. What do you want to tell the library world there?
My final advice is, especially during this time, as much as possible, be kind to yourself. Each one of you is facing enormous stress, either directly yourself or family and friends. And if you have a less than productive day where you just do 8 hours of Netflix, please don't beat yourself up about it. We're all trying to figure out how to cope. Pretend you were your own best friend. If a best friend came to you and said, man, I'm really down, I think I should be doing more, or something like that, what would you tell them? You'd say, hey, it's okay. This is really trying times. Be kind to yourself. So please do that. We all need that. We all need to be kind to each other, of course, but we need to be kind to ourselves and just give ourselves a pass now and then on kind of the things that we're facing.
Well, thank you very much, Migell. Oh, and for the record, to Judith, yes, that was a Hot Ones reference. This entire series is just a complete ripoff. And unfortunately, I could not find any good photos from Migell's social media. Otherwise, we would have done a deep dive into that as well. But
they're all on my wife's Facebook page. But I'm not
okay, well, I guess I should friend her then. But anyway, hey, thank you so much, Migell. I really appreciate it. I feel like I've gotten to know you better, and it's going to be really cool when we can actually be in person, and
exactly
we can go on a taco crawl in San Diego. Okay,
I'm all for it.
Yeah, right. We'll bring Chelsea, and we'll bring Miko, and we'll bring Jenny, and they can be our guides, and
that's right.
We'll find some good food down there. But again, thank you, and again to the people out in library world. Again, thank you for joining us. On Thursday, we've got one more. It's going to be with Susan Broman, the assistant director of LAPL, and I hope you can be there for that. And
I got to put in a plug. I work with Susan in LA County. She's the most fantastic person ever.
Okay, well, you're about the 18th person that has told me that, so I can't wait for our chat. And again, if you see the link for a evaluation, I think you're going to get it tomorrow. Please fill that out. It just helps us. And with that, I think we're going to call it a day. But again, out there, continue doing what you're doing. Like what Migell was saying, don't beat yourself up. Just take a day at a time, stay safe, and we're going to get through this thing together. All right. So thank you all so much.